Hello everybody, my name is Hajo Reinders. I'm a TESOL professor at Anaheim University and also professor of education at Unitec in New Zealand. Yes, so data mining and learning analytics are fairly similar sort of terms, and essentially they are ways of making sense of large sets of data. Now, as teachers, of course, we've had data for decades, test scores and student performance in class, but the difference is that now we have far more data from far more learners about far more things that learners do. And so analytics is really a way of trying to figure out which parts of the data are actually useful information to help us improve our teaching. Good place to start is your own classroom. It's a topic that I think a lot of teachers are a little bit daunted by. They think, oh, analytics, it sounds like math and in engineering and science and what have you, and it can be, but it doesn't have to be. We all in our teaching, of course, face a range of practical and pedagogical questions and concerns, things that come up. And I would, in my advice would be to just pick one kind of recurring issue that you've had. It could be low student participation, it could be issues with motivation, it could be particular groups of students who are struggling for some reason, something that you have observed that you can't quite put the finger on, you can't quite figure out. And then look to see what data might exist within your school, within your class, whether from the learning management system or from enrollment data or from other observations that you can make to see if you can kind of make sense of the problem and figure it out in that way. So keep it simple and keep it pedagogical. A lot of the resources that teachers need to get started are freely available and usually already being used within the schools. So if we're looking at learning management systems like Blackboard and Moodle, there are many free programs available that if your school isn't already using something like that, you might be able to implement in your classes. In terms of actually making sense of the data and doing the analysis, something as simple as Google Spreadsheets as a free version of Excel or some other software like that most of us are familiar with actually suffices, especially in the beginning stages. So don't worry too much about the technology, that's the easy part. It's asking the right questions, the pedagogical questions, that's the key. Yeah, this of course is a perennial problem. If you've got anything more than 3 or 4 students in your class, i.e. most of us, it's really hard to get a sense of who's doing what in the first place and also who really is on board, who understands what you've just said. The age-old technique of saying, does everybody understand any questions? No, let's move on. Obviously that's got its limitations, and so an increasing number of classrooms are using programs and software that the teacher uses during the class to kind of check and assign scores or badges or stickers or something like that to record who is doing what. So for example, a student who interacts well or who supports another learner, who collaborates well, will get an extra point for that. So it's one way of kind of checking to see what's going on throughout the lesson. And then of course, after the lesson as a teacher, you would be looking back at that and trying to figure out which students might not have paid as much attention as you'd like, who might have been struggling. Yeah, this is a big problem, of course, that teachers have, especially with larger classes. If you've got 20, 30, 40 students, how are you going to know who really understood what you just said and who hasn't? And so analytics here can be very helpful, specifically what we call synchronous analytics. So this is the kind of observations that you would do during the class rather than afterwards. And it uses mostly software and programs that allow students to back channel to you. For example, if they're having a problem or if they'd like you to slow down or repeat something without having to put up their hands and stop and possibly feel anxious and inconfident. So a back channel could be using a mobile phone or a tablet, and it allows the students to send a message to the rest of the class and the teachers, possibly anonymously. And this is a wonderful way of encouraging the learners to interact more and to speak up more in an anonymous manner. Yeah, the old admin. Don't we all love it? I think there's a risk, of course, more data might mean more work, but I think if we do it cleverly, a lot of the kind of tedious administrative processes can be mechanized and automatized to quite a large extent. which is not as difficult as it might sound. So if you have a system, a way of recording, for example, attendance in your class, It's not difficult to get somebody to help you set up an alert that sends you, say, a text message or an email when attendance levels start dropping below a certain point after, say, a number of weeks into the course. And it's little clever kind of innovations like that that can actually really make teachers' lives a lot easier, such as also, for example, the submission, automatic submission of homework and tasks that students need to complete, where the results are then automatically grouped by the student into different folders that the students can then look up online and the teacher can see online. A lot of this is very tedious work if done offline, but with the help of technology can really make the teacher's job a lot easier. I think the key advice is really just to try and try something that is small, that is simple, that helps you to solve an immediate problem that you and your colleagues might have, and work together. One of the huge benefits of analytics is that it allows you to see patterns, and of course the more data you have, the easier it is to see the patterns. So you might team up with a few colleagues and try and tackle a problem and see how different learners respond to different types of instruction or different materials in the different classes over time. So keep it simple, keep it pedagogical, and work together as a team. But most importantly, just try it out. Your learners will love you for it, and you will improve your practice.